Welcome, dear students. Today I am going to discuss one of the most perplexing issues of South Asian region, the nuclearization of the region. I will do it within the broader framework of balance of power and balance of threat. Hence, a number of significant objectives of this lecture are to understand the notion of balance of power, to understand the balance of threat, examine South Asia's nuclearization process, to evaluate the current trends of nuclear balance of power in the region, and to examine which of the approaches has more relevance in South Asia. Dear students, first we'll have an overview on theoretical debate between balance of power and balance of threat. Balance of power is one of the most frequently used concepts in international politics, but it is also one of the most confusing. The term is loosely used to describe and justify all sorts of things. The 18th century British philosopher David Hume characterized the balance of power as a constant rule of prudent politics. But the 19th century British liberal Richard Codwin called it as chimera, an undescribed, indescribable, incomprehensible nothing. Woodrow Wilson, the US president during First World War, thought that the balance of power was an evil principle because it encouraged statesmen to treat countries like cheese to be cut upon for political convenience, regardless of the concerns of their people. Nevertheless, within the discourse of international relations, the term is used in four senses, namely, as a description, as a policy, as a theory, and as a particular geopolitical period. However, here we are only concerned with the third one, which is as a theory. As a theory, balance of power is considered to be one of the most distinctive political theories of international politics. Here, it's used to describe a more or less automatic equilibrium of power in international system. This theory predicts that states will act to prevent any one state from developing a preponderance of power. That can be done through internal adjustment, external collaboration, along with other countries, or both. Put another way, it predicts that leaders will, as a matter of course, embrace a balance of power policy simply because they cannot afford not to. In domestic politics, we often see bandwagoning instead of balancing. Politicians often flock to a likely winner. Balance of power theory, however, predicts that state will join whoever seems weaker because states will act to keep any one state from becoming preponderant. Bandwagoning in international politics risks one's independence. That's why a balance of power policy says, I quote, join the weaker side, unquote. Balance of power is a policy of helping the underdog because if you help the top dog, it may eventually turn around and eat you. In a nutshell, the main variable that underpins the balance of power theory is the distribution of power, or what neorealist prefers to call as capabilities. For many neorealists like Kenneth Walls, balancing is like a law, like phenomena in international politics. As he argues, I quote, irrespective of the end of the state's acts, one predicts as a theory makes sense that they will constantly engage in balancing behaviors. Therefore, the theory makes the strong claims for occurrence of balancing phenomena in the system. The theory, however, does not claim that a balance once achieved will be maintained, but rather a balance once disturbed will be restored in one way or another, hence confirming the recurring nature of balance of power, unquote. Stephen M. Walt's The Origin of Alliance challenged the balance of power theory and argues that states actually react to perceived threat and not to power, and aim to balance it. Walt claims that aggregate power, including population, individual and military capabilities and technical powerness, geographical proximity, offensive capabilities and aggressive intentions are important elements in alliance politics and affect the level of threat. Walt believes that if states consider the geographic proximity, the perceived impressive military power and intentions of other states, they will be more likely to form alliance against most threatening state. Important to note is that overall, Walt's balance of threat theory embodies the balance of power assumption by incorporating factors of capabilities, geography and intentions. From his perspective, balance of threat theory offers a more compelling explanation of alliance choices than an exclusive focus on distribution of power capabilities. Inquiring the impact of several related but distinct sources of threat can provide a more pervasive account of alliance formation than can focusing solely on distribution of aggregate capabilities. Furthermore, Kenneth Walt's account of balance of power theory is only applicable to great powers, while as Walt's balance of threat includes lesser powers as well. Walt's conceptualization of alliance as both formal as well as informal security arrangements and all other similar security arrangements under the broader notion of alignment makes much more sense in contemporary international relations, where traditional alliance had been replaced by new security alignments. The inclusion of ideational, perceptional as well as the economic perspective makes this theory further broader than Walt's theory. Now let's look into India and Pakistan's nuclear balance in South Asia. The haste and the manner in which partition was executed necessitated that two dominants of India and Pakistan will inherit conflict along with their independence. This is the reason that the two countries, apart from continuing with border skirmishes, indulging in proxy war, have also gone to war 4 times. Thus, the differences between these two states are central to the understanding of pattern of South Asia's security architecture. In addition, India emerged as a larger state than Pakistan, comprising 73% of South Asia's land area, 77% of its population, and 77% of its gross national product. The consequential imbalance of power between the two resulting from partition underpin the necessity of balancing. India's emergence as most preponderant state created a threat perception for Pakistan that must be balanced. Accordingly, Pakistan, in order to balance the Indian threat, was prompted to search for military assistance and support among the US, China, France, and some of the Muslim states of the Middle East. India, even though initially hesitant to join the bloc politics owing to its non-alignment policy, was also compelled by the Chinese threat perception to search for an externally ally, and it got Soviet Union. It's most important to note here that the Chinese aggression of 1962 and the testing of nuclear bomb in 1964, if anything, increased the threat perception for India and contributed directly to the 1974 nuclear tests by India. Even if the explosion of nuclear bomb as smiling Buddha for India may be peaceful exercise, it certainly was threat for their Pakistani counterparts, and they will rather eat grass or leave to build their own bomb, to use the words of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. To offset the nuclear imbalance, Pakistan covertly started constructing its uranium enrichment facility with the help from its external ally and all-weather friend China. It was in 1976 that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Mao signed remarkable nuclear deal when China agreed to transfer 50 kilograms of uranium to Pakistan. It was not until the end of Cold War that South Asia's nuclear arms race started more overtly. Nuclear developments in both India and Pakistan are tied to their perceived national security and national pride. India justifies its policy on the premise of its antagonism with China mainly, and to a lesser extent with Pakistan. Pakistan bases its nuclear option solely on its threat perception vis-à-vis India. India's 5 nuclear explosions at Pokhran in Rajasthan on 11th and 13th May 1998 changed the balance of power in South Asia. The Indian Prime Minister said that his country was now a nuclear weapon state and would not hesitate to use the bomb if attacked. These statements caused a great concern in Pakistan, and the then Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif assured his nation that Pakistan would take all appropriate steps to safeguard its security in the wake of Indian nuclear explosions and would not accept any outside pressure in this regard. Soon after Pakistan had tested the nuclear device, Prime Minister Vajpayee offered to sign a no first use accord with Pakistan. Pakistan did not respond positively because if Pakistan is legally bound not to be the first to use nuclear weapons, it will not be able to defend itself against the conventional attack by India. Since these tests, the nuclear arms race in South Asia continues. India has acquired a ballistic missile defense system, invested heavily in satellites, launched a nuclear submarine, unveiled ambitious limited war fighting strategies, for instance, its Cold Start military doctrine, and moved away from the concept of deterrence to compliance. Pakistan has responded with, for instance, the fielding of NASR, nuclear weapon supplemented by fully spectrum deterrence. These moves have the potential to erode the prevailing deterrence stability of South Asia and cause the region to drift towards conflict. The steady enlargement of nuclear stockpiles and sweeping modifications in conventional as well as nuclear doctrines of these two regional nuclear armed rivals, combined with a massive influx of foreign technology to India, first under the banner of Next Steps in Strategical Partnership in 2005 and later the Defence, Trade and Technology Initiative in 2012, have pushed South Asia towards perpetual instability. Both India and Pakistan have demonstrated a growing appetite for new types of strategic weaponry, and while not always in public, they are clearly beginning to factor in the possible impact of new types of capabilities by each other for deterrence and security. It has been already warned by experts that this can be a possible move towards an Indian counterforce doctrine, possibly involving strategic non-nuclear as well as or even instead of nuclear weapons, and the possible impact of multi-layered Indian BMD and its link with new Pakistani nuclear delivery system has been part of this debate for over a decade. The worry, of course, is that the introduction of more sophisticated and destructive technology in South Asia is going to lock India and Pakistan in a security dilemma and create a vicious circle that will become increasingly difficult to break. The rapidly changing strategic landscape of South Asia brings to mind the words of George Santayana. I quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it," unquote. For India and Pakistan, the history of Cold War could be a guide. The US and Soviet Union accumulated a vast stockpile of nuclear weapons in the 27 years after the first nuclear explosion conducted by US in 1945. Yet later, they were still able to sign the SALT I Accord in 1972. However, looking at India and Pakistan's rationale for nuclear deterrence and the rapid developments in their conventional and non-conventional weaponry, combined with the transformation of security doctrines towards an increasing reliance on power of nuclear deterrence, it appears that neither country has learned any lesson from the excesses of the Cold War. It seems that neither India nor Pakistan have reached their desired maximum number of nuclear weapons, the point at which they might feel there is no need to produce more nuclear weapons or delivery systems. This is substantiated by the 2021 Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's report, according to which both India and Pakistan are expanding and modernizing their nuclear arsenals, with both possessing 156 and 165 nuclear warheads respectively. However, it's pertinent to point out here that despite the nuclearization of the region and the deterrence impact, there still is a room for conventional war, as demonstrated by 1999 Kargil episode and many more recent ones which brought the two arch rivals to the brink of war. One can here refer to 2019 Balakot airstrikes as the case in point. How can one explain this anomaly within the nuclear umbrella? It's in this context scholars of South Asia have pointed out to the limitations of deterrence theory of Cold War context when applying to the case of this region. For one such scholar, Rajesh Basrur, this phenomena is better captured by what he famously termed as stability-instability paradox. By this paradox, he meant that strategic stability, meaning a low likelihood at conventional war, will escalate to the nuclear level, reduces the danger of launching a conventional war. But in lowering the potential costs of conventional conflict, strategic stability also makes the outbreak of such violence more likely. Now, let's look at why balance of threat is more relevant than balance of power in South Asia. Well, dear students, it's time now to evaluate the two theories discussed in the beginning of this lecture and to explain which one of them is having more relevance in explaining the issues of South Asian security. As already discussed in the first section, Stephen Wall's balance of threat being the refined account of balance of power theory by including the role of geographical proximity, ideational, perceptional as well as economic aid perspective is more broader perspective. Therefore, the balance of threat is having more explanatory power when it comes to South Asia. There are a number of reasons why this is the case. Examining the phenomena in regional setting, that South Asia, makes Stephen Wall's balance of threat theory relevant due to its regional specificity. As he has developed his theory on the basis of his analysis of Middle East, being a non-Western universe, makes it more relevant than the older version of balance of power theory, which is mostly based on Cold War European experience. Most of the states are smaller states, hence a domain of balance of threat theory. You must know that the realist balance of power logic has mostly been associated with great powers. However, when it comes to South Asia, apart from India and Pakistan, most of other states are very small, and therefore explaining their rationale of balancing is not the domain of balance of power theory. Instead, it is balance of threat theory, which is broader understanding of the notion of threat perception and its application for smaller states like the Middle Eastern ones, which has much more explanatory allure. The broad definition of alliance by putting all categories under broader phenomena of alignment, including both formal as well as informal, makes balance of threat theory also relevant in South Asian case. The Indo-US and China-Pakistan strategic cooperation being informal alliance can better be explained by this theory. Additionally, the emerging pattern of smaller states' strategic partnership with India's arch-rival China being informal alignment can also be explained by this theory. The role of geographic proximity is relevant in case of South Asia as a region, where the hostile environment prevails in fact because of geographic proximity of these states. Almost all the states have border issues with one another, the dominant being Indo-Pak and India-China border issues. Apart from these issues, CPEC passing through Gilgit-Baltistan, which India claims as its own territory, the 2020 Galwan episode, which claimed the lives of 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers respectively, and from which the two sides are yet to disengage, are recent examples of perils of geographic proximity. Even the other states like Bangladesh and Nepal have broader problems with India, which directly impacts the threat perception vis-à-vis their perceived big brother. The role of ideology and economic aid in alliance formation can offer broader understanding of alignment patterns in South Asia. The role of ideology in explaining the cause of threat perception between India and Pakistan, also by analyzing China-Pakistan all-weather friendship between the two ideologically dissimilar states, provides mixed results. Moreover, the huge economic aid received by Pakistan, first from US and now China, as a part of external balancing efforts, the current trajectory of Indo-US trade relations and China's investment in India's neighborhood makes much sense for Wall's balance of threat theory. The changing perception of India's smaller neighbors very recently by displaying balancing tendencies makes Wall more relevant because India was comparatively more powerful than all right from the beginning. Instead of focusing solely on distribution of power, the inclusion of cognitive elements makes his theory vividly suitable for explaining the alignment formation and security architecture in South Asia. Well, dear students, in today's lecture, we discussed one of the most perplexing issues facing the South Asian region, the nuclearization. We discussed the two important theories of realism, balance of power and balance of threat. While balance of power is generally regarded as most distinct political theory of international politics, however, it has been updated and refined to the balance of threat theory by Stephen Wall. We also discussed the nuclear balance and posturing between India and Pakistan, as well as their rational and overall nuclear forces. However, as we discussed, it is the balance of threat which has more explanatory power in case of South Asian context. Let me quickly repeat here. Apart from comprehensive power by incorporating the role of geographical proximity, ideational perception, as well as the economic aid perspective, balance of threat is much wider and it has the potential to provide a comprehensive treatment of South Asia's nuclearization. I hope you had enjoyed listening to me. Thank you.